Warm welcome to the partner session that deals with peace education at DMZ. We're going to discuss this issue with the specialists from different countries today. And we have Professor Kwon Gu-il, who is a professor at the Korea National Defense University. And we also have a discussant, and among whom there is a Shad Changes Zafar. He is a colonel of Pakistan Army and attaché at the Pakistan Embassy in South Korea. We also have Professor Ha Young-jae, who is a visiting professor at Hallym University. And he used to be a deputy commander in CHIP in the South Korean Army. And we also have Dr. Kim Gyu-nam, who is a researcher at the Research Institute for Gangwon. And one more, whose name is Charlie Lamento, who is a GHNI permanent representative to the United Nations based in Geneva, Switzerland. So he's connected online to be with us. So the peace education is very much in need for all of us. And the question is how best we can perform peace education. So I think that the best place that we can perform is at the war zone, when the war or conflict is ongoing. That's the very place that we need peace education. At the moment, UN Peacekeeping Operation Center is located at the Korea National University of Defense. And the government of Gangwon is highly interested to host the PKO Center to DMZ area in the province. So that's why we are opening this session to discuss what the Peacekeeping Operation Center is all about and what are the main role in that. And there are many aspects in peace education. So peace is not just a military concept, it is a multi-dimensional concept that deals with non-military issues like people-to-people relationships, public diplomacy, and even science and technology, and many areas are related and closely connected to peace issue. So with the speaker, Kwon, and the panels from different institutions and in different countries, we're going to focus on this issue. So first, I'd like to ask Professor Kwon for the theme presentation, but before that, let me tell you that the 90 minutes are given to us. So about 30 minutes will be given to Professor Kwon for theme presentation. And like more or less 15 minutes will be given to the panelists. And after the presentation and discussions, there will be questions and answer period, which will be open to you on the floor and even on online. Right, thank you. Professor Kwon, please.
안녕하십니까?
Yes, good afternoon. I am with the National Defense University at the Peacekeeping Operation Center. My name is Kwon Gu-il. Today I'll be talking about the change of perception on PKOs and our challenge forward. It is an honor to be here. In particular, PKOs actually have been acknowledged to be activities for the military. But I do believe that we need a more national consensus on the importance of PKOs. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about this issue. So I would first like to look at the history of Korea's troop dispatch and and look at the issues and also suggest a way forward. Up to now, many experts have noted that our overseas PKOs and also the PKO Center future direction. So experts have been presenting this, but I think that we need to further supplement the specific details. So the nationwide policy for PKO and a PKO center at the national level should be laid out. And also, rather than simply an education center for PKO education and peacekeeping education, I do believe that we need to focus on a paradigm shift to expand the role of the PKO centers so that PKOs can contribute to the peace process on the Korean Peninsula and also to ensure that the Republic of Korea can contribute to the international community for the next 30 years. So once again, first I will briefly touch upon the history of Korea's troop dispatch. We'll look at the limitations of Korea's troop dispatch and my personal views on the policy direction of PKO of the Korean government. And based on that, I would like to talk about the vision and role of a national level PKO center. So first, the history of troop dispatch, overseas troop dispatch by the Republic of Korea. Before we go into the history, I would like to note that last year in 2021, for the first time in Asia, Korea hosted the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial Talks. And Foreign Minister Jung Eui-yong, Foreign Affairs Minister, mentioned that Korea will contribute in technology and health for PKO. There was a Seoul initiative announced, and so the technology, the training, and education for female officers, as well as supporting for the capacity building of the UN PKO officers, will be areas that Korea will continue to support. Also, last year marked the 30th anniversary of Korea's entrance into the UN, and so it was an opportune moment to look back at our past 30 years and how Korea contributed to the global community, and also look towards the next 30 years. So it was an important point of time for a new direction, and it is also an important period of time for us to think about our future direction forward. In 1991, both South Korea and North Korea entered into the UN, and since then, Korea currently holds the 11th position when it comes to the contributions to the UN regular budget. When it comes to the share of cost of the peacekeeping operations, Korea is ranked at number 10. Also, 917 Koreans are working at international organizations, and 129 people have been working at the Secretariat since the entrance of the UN. And also 27 individuals are working in the UN PKO activities. 542 troop members are participating as well. There are 11 individuals, 300 troop level, and 139 experts for defense cooperation taking part in PKOs, and also including our Vietnam War participation. There has been a considerable number of people sent overseas as a form of troop dispatch. And also, we have a number of high-level officials working at the UN from the past. For example, we held the position of the president of the Security Council on the non-permanent seat. For example, we were the chair of the UN General Assembly during the 56th UN General Assembly. So there were a number of high-level positions held, and also for security, economy, and the military. We can say that there were many outcomes that we were able to obtain through our overseas troop dispatch efforts. But we can say that the environment for troop dispatch continues to change. So we need to live up to this change, and we just took a look at the history. Now it's time to look at the limitations and the challenges going forward, and also the future direction. As I mentioned before, many experts have noted that along with our outcomes, as you can see in the table on the upper right, we need to have a strategy for going forward. So there has been 6 main points noted. And number 1 would be that we also have to send our troops to risk-prone areas. Number 2, we have to increase the number of troops participating in UN PKOs. And also number 3, we have to enter further into high-level positions within the UN. Let's take a look at these 3. Now, here you can see the number of people in the high-level positions, for example, the SRSGs of the UN Secretary General, and also the nationalities of the 4 FCs, the countries that contribute forces. So you can see that in the top 6, there are, for example, Italy, Denmark, Ireland are the force contributing countries that do not send that much, but there are also countries that also contribute a little, but for example, Senegal and Kenya, that take many different high-level positions. And especially if you look at countries such as Brazil, Pakistan, and Nigeria, you can see that sending troops, a lot of force contribution does not necessarily mean that this can lead to many high-level positions. And also, there is no firm, clear guideline for entering into the UN in high-level positions, but the contributions and also the capacity, for example, can be some criteria. Now, the cooperation level can lead to political and diplomatic influence. So in 50 countries, there has been special envoys to the Secretary General, but there has not been a clear pattern that we could identify. However, the US, Germany, the UK, for example, these countries who have heavily financed the UN, and also Nigeria, Tunisia, the UK, Swiss, Canada, Pakistan shows a large number. Canada, Swiss, however, has sent a small number of troops, but nevertheless shows high in ranking, and also France is not included here. Brazil, Pakistan, India, Nigeria, and Bangladesh, they are in the top 5 countries for force contributions. These are major force contributing countries, but the low-ranking force contributing countries, if you look at the patterns, very obscure. So you can see that there's a mixed pattern here, and in conclusion, the entrance into high-level military positions, well, it is not dependent upon the level of force contribution. Sending many troops to a certain mission and also having similarities in terms of the language, culture, and geography of a country that experiencing the difficulty or the conflict. These types of countries seem to play a greater role. So you can see that such countries have sent many private sector civilian people to these high-level positions. And as you can see in 3-B, if you're ranked within the 11th position of the force contribution, it means that you have sent around, if you're at the 11th position, you've sent around 2,000. So most of the top-ranking countries have sent around more or less 2,000. And realistically, however, it is difficult for South Korea to expand our troop dispatch to over 2,000. Of course, there is no clear standard, but on average, if you look at the top contributors to the UN, if you look at the average troops, it's about 0.24%. So we do believe that the appropriate number of troops that we send would be 1,200. As I mentioned before, now in the UN multinational mission, and also if you look at the various overseas dispatch, we have 691 and 319. So in overall, over 1,000 has been sent overseas. expanding the number of people that participate in the PKOs, once again, I do believe at this moment it's realistically difficult. It has realistic limitations at this point. So if you look at the left here, you can see that there was a survey on the general public of Korea, and overall, the Koreans seem to be positive about sending troops for PKO activities because they believe that this contributes to enhancing the national status of Korea and the international community and can lead to national interest. However, when asking them if in the future we should increase the number of troops sent, 60.1% believe that we should maintain the current level, and 46.5% believe that we should send them only to safe areas. And also, once dispatched, and if that region enters into a difficult situation, then 25.2% believe that we should withdraw our troops. And also, you can see that overall there was a negative view on sending our troops to risky areas. So you can see that the general public believes that thinks positively that we take part in the PKO activity by sending our troops, but they are against sending them to dangerous areas. And also, even if it's not the highest position level, we should still nevertheless have Koreans take important positions so that we can exert more influence in the international community. And also, we should host international conferences, for example, to lay the foundation for Korea to exert more influence in the international community. The developing countries, in order to further expand their influence in the international communities, sometimes send and contribute forces. But in terms of foreign affairs and also other measures, you can see that more advanced countries tend to focus more on other measures rather than forced contribution. Now, if you look at the Grand Finance Global Soft Power Index, Korea ranked at number 11. This is the upper right diagram. Joseph Nye, a professor at Harvard University, had said that Korea's soft power is actually capturing the world. Now, I think that we have to continuously engage in global issues, and also we should further expand opportunities for Koreans to enter into international organizations so that we can further expand our role. We also have to have more diverse people participate in these PKO activities. We also have to establish more partnerships within the global community. And for that, we also need to change our paradigm for UN PKO activities. And also when it comes to the role of the National Defense University PKO Center, we have to expand its role so that it can become a national level PKO center. Now, I talked about the 2021 Peacekeeping Ministerial that was held in Seoul. There was a Seoul initiative that pledged Korea's plans and intentions going forward to contribute more. Now, based on that, I would like to mention that fostering more experts in this field, further partnership between the private and the public sector, and also establishing a national level PKO center is something that I want to emphasize. So I want to overall emphasize that at a national level, we need the right preparations, lay the foundation, and also we need the government's policy to further strengthen our position in the international community. So first of all, in terms of the government's policy for peacekeeping, I think that Korea should play the role of a leader, not a follower. We need a niche strategy, and also we need a K-Peace national strategy, and also we need to host strategically the headquarters of UN and other international organization agencies. Now, UN peacekeeping is the most effective tool for maintaining peace in the world. And we can see that the UN peacekeeping operations, however, are changing, and there are sometimes operations taking place in very highly dangerous environments. After the Seoul Initiative was announced, our Minister of Defense gave an address and said that we would utilize our advanced technology to establish a smart camp, deploy medical support team to South Sudan, offer engineering and demining training courses, provide helicopter assets, organize and offer female officer training courses, and deploying additional police force. So 6 pledges were made. And also, first of all, the Smart Camp pilot project was the number 1 on the list, and then sending medical support team to South Sudan and supporting 4.5 million to the African continent and establishing a medical center in Ethiopia, establishing partnership with Kenya, and also contributing the helicopter assets to help create a helicopter troop within the UN, offering female officer training courses and sending more cyber experts, and also contributing to the trust fund for UN were mentioned. For Korea to play a leading role in UN peacekeeping activities. All of this would be based on our technological capacities and competitive advantage and capabilities. And this is in line with the digital transformation strategy of the UN. It also focuses on utilizing the 4th Industrial Revolution technologies to improve the conditions for the missions of UNPKO. By doing so, by making these contributions, we can lead the agenda of UN peacekeeping. And I do believe that maintaining a firm status is very important for Korea. So we have to be engaged in all areas of peacekeeping efforts, and we have to exert our soft power so that Korea can lead the way in international peacekeeping efforts. When we think about how we can contribute to the international community in the next 30 years, we have to come up with a vision and goal for an international peacekeeping center at the national level, which should be very future-oriented. So we need to set the right direction for this type of a national infrastructure that can contribute to international peacekeeping efforts. Many countries are currently operating research institutes for UN peacekeeping activities. If you look at the left, you can see that there has been a number of resolution-related or agenda-related researches that have been ongoing in joint with UN agencies, or there has been independent panels for conducting research related to the UN. In order to lead UN peacekeeping activities, we have to foster the experts that can engage in these types of research activities. For example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is encouraging the fostering of such experts just by contributing financially. A considerable sum to the UN would not be enough to have more Koreans participate in high-level positions within the UN. I do believe that we have to continue to make further efforts. Last year in 2021, we actually participated in the publication of a guidebook, of a manual of the UN. So we need to continue to engage in these types of activities of coming up with manuals and guidebooks. And for that, we need the personnel, we need the experts to do that. So we need to foster the human talent. Peacekeeping operations has a long history within the UN. Secretary General Guterres launched the A4P so that peacekeeping operations can continue to place for us the most effective tool for peace. And he said that the UN and the global community should cooperate in 8 fields and also in terms of 40 or more commitments. And last year, the past achievements were assessed, and in order to solve new challenges related to PKO, there will be 7 priorities and 2 areas that should be tackled. So A for Peace has been implemented last year. Now, based on extensive experience, UN continues to evolve when it comes to peacekeeping operations. At such a time, we need to come up with the right strategy to adjust to the changes and ensure that Korea can play a leading role. Now, just focusing on security is not enough. We need a more comprehensive strategy. We need to collaborate more. We need to focus on the various areas of peacekeeping. Up till now, we can see that a number of missions were focused on security, but we can see that the missions have been more diversified, and the traditional areas for peacekeeping has been further expanded to new areas. So observation and supervision of a ceasefire has been, the agenda has not been limited to this, but has been further broadened. In the 1990s, we can say that the development agents have been engaging in multilateral efforts to cooperate, and this had been linked with the peacekeeping operations from the 1990s. In 2000, the peacekeeping report was issued, and you can see in this report that collaboration among the agencies was emphasized. There has to be a clear agenda, and there has been an effort to further expand peacekeeping operations. Since the 2000s, or starting from 2010, peacekeeping activities have been focusing on helping the developing countries to overcome their challenges, and you can see that conflict, development, and peace and security has been recognized to be interrelated issues. And from this period, you can see that multifaceted efforts have been made, and so many different actors have been coming together to deal with these issues in a comprehensive manner. Also, we can see that since the 1990s, the developing verse and also human rights issues activists have been combined with peacekeeping efforts. Since the 2000s, you can see that various development support efforts have been carried out, but development up till now have been focusing more on security in the past. Starting from this period of the 2000s, there was a realization that peace and justice and gender equality, for example, is very important, and all of these issues were combined together. And it was recognized that security and development is co-related. Strong institutions and governance are important for security and development. And such mutual dependency is something that has to be maintained to ensure that a balance between development and security is ensured when it comes to peacekeeping activities. Of course, depending on the operation environment, there can be a priority placed on one over the other. And depending on that, the development actors can play an integral part of the future UN peacekeeping activities. So now, the roots of conflicts are now increasingly being recognized as something that we have to analyze and understand in order to resolve the conflicts. So, Korea should come up with an agenda for tackling the niche areas of peacekeeping so that Korea can play a greater role. Next, I would like to talk about the K-Peace National Brand Strategy. Korea has experienced colonization and the Korean War. It was the poorest country, one of the poorest countries in the world. It was an aid recipient, but now it is a donor country. And it now actually appeals to the world with its K-films, K-drama, K-quarantine, and K-pop. Now it is being respected as a responsible member of the international community with roles and responsibilities. K-Peace can help us play a greater role in the international community based on our past experience and history, as well as our efforts for peace establishment. It can help us lead the international efforts, and it can become a major national brand that symbolizes peace. So we should make K-Peace a national brand so that we can carry out strategies symbolizing peace in various areas, including politics, economy, culture, military, and society. It can help us enhance our national image around the world, and also based on the K-Peace national brand and strategy, we can further come up with an integrated system for international cooperation. President Moon Jae-in had declared that we should make the DMZ an international peace zone. Right now, because of stalled inter-Korean relations, we have not been able to pursue the building of an international peace zone. But the DMZ actually is located in the middle of the Korean Peninsula. If you look at the international organizations, you can see that most of them are hosted by European countries or the US. Now, the Korean Peninsula peace process is being pursued by the Korean government, and at such a time, we have to come up with a mid to long-term vision to attract and host the international organization headquarters. And so perhaps we can increase our contributions to such agencies, or we can host international conferences or forums with such international organizations, and also send presenters and relevant seminars. We should take on a strategic role at a national level to appeal to the international organizations to attract more of such international organizations to be hosted here in Korea. Also, DMZ is the center of fauna and flora. It is a symbol of peace, and it provides a future vision for international peace. It has a symbolic value, and we do believe that we can actually host international organization headquarters at the DMZ because it has a symbolic meaning. But in order to do so, we need the massive budget, and also we need to be able to provide the housing facilities and infrastructure, the social infrastructure, for example, and we also have to provide incentives by the government. We also have to support the international organizations legislatively and also through institutions. So we have to utilize our national brand, and also we have to think about also to promote the work efficiency of these international organizations. We can think of moving or relocating Korean government agencies that have relevance with these international organizations to help them work better. So just hosting a number of international organizations, I don't think that we can really help further improve Korea's status and image. But what we need to do is we should establish an environment-friendly peace DMZ international zone and peace complex where there can be international organizations hosted, there can be research institutes, the PKO Center, and there can be international tourism projects provided within this complex.
Next, I'd like to talk about the vision and the role of the National PKO Center. With regards to the discussions on the National PKO Center, it's been an ongoing process. In 1993, we first sent troops to Somalia. And in 1995, the PKO course was established in the Joint Forces Staff College. And the PKO work really mostly had to do with administrative work. And in 1998, we had the PKO department established, and we had 6 officers participate, and we increased the number of overseas dispatch. And this was the beginning of the official discussion over the National PKO Center. And under the Roh Moo-hyun government, the Defense Plan 2020 and the 192 defense items under Lee Myung-bak government, and also continued on to the Park Geun-hye government. But in 2019, there was a defense white paper that was established. It talked about increasing the number of the overseas dispatch, but now the number is limited to 20 people or officers participating in the courses for the PKO department, and we still don't have an official national PKO center established in the country as of yet. And the center should move to the DMZ, International Peace Zone, and provide specialized education, and establish networks at home and abroad, and engage in various international activities, including inter-Korean cooperation. So at the National PKO Center, there has to be public, private, military, and police integrated education courses provided. Currently, the center focuses on just the military, but the public and the private sectors have to be included. Regards to actual dispatch cases of such integrated work, we have sent to Afghanistan, and in Cambodia also, we participate in the UN PKO there as a unified force. And this PKO budget right now, it cannot be shouldered by the Ministry of National Defense also, but only. And so the PKO budget should be established separately and linked to the ODA budget as it is done in Japan right now. And so the PKO budget should be linked to the ODA budget as a result to ensure sufficient funding is provided for these activities. And our PKO Center right now, we receive accreditation from the UN. We do have observer courses and landmine courses and women military officers courses right now. And these more additional courses will be established in the future. And in our military also, we have invested 400 billion won for a metaverse platform development. And when the platform is established, this can be used for UN cooperative programs, and so we can innovate using these adoption of new technologies and platforms. Recently, the UN agenda has been set as the Youth Security Culture and Vision. And so at the National PKO Center, where I mentioned earlier that there are 129 officers working in administrative work, which we feel is a very small portion. And so more on the right side, you will see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs official route by which our youth can go into work for international organizations. But for PKO specifically, we don't have such a route established yet. And so if the National PKO Center is established, it can provide more support and more opportunities for our youth to go into PKO-related agencies and participate in these activities. As for the immediate work that we can do, we should establish a PKO Center branch school to teach certain courses. And for the youth, for example, peace and security, culture, training, and education can be provided. And there could be youth vision courses provided to help them launch into international organizations and provide them with more opportunities for overseas PKO participation. As I mentioned earlier, this center should lead in national PKO policy formulation, and it has to play the role of research and development also. So international peace research center should be established to collaborate on UN-related research projects and further deepen the cooperative relationship. And there are some journals that we are publishing at our center right now. These sub-journals should be uplifted to an international status so that we can take the initiative in the agenda setting for PKO at the UN level. With regards to expanding exchanges and cooperation, it's the same for within Korea also. We need to expand cooperation among the different agencies. And to do that, we have to ensure that PKO will not be used just as a military tool, but as a diplomatic tool. Now I'd like to talk about the possibilities for inter-Korean cooperation. On the left, you will find that sometimes the humanitarian assistance to North Korea has gone up, sometimes gone down. So there's been a fluctuation. When there's a positive image on North Korea, humanitarian assistance went up. And when there's a negative perception on North Korea, the reverse happened. And so for the two Koreas to participate in the PKO activities together, I mean, if that happens, that's going to have a positive effect in the international community and can lead to further increase in the humanitarian assistance to the North. As for the specific ways that we can implement inter-Korean PKO cooperation, we can begin gradually. We can begin from a single unit deployment and increase and expand that gradually. And also in terms of training, I mean, we could provide training and equipment assistance to North Korea. And we could have a triangular partnership established, thus laying the foundation for continuous cooperation. As for the example that I'm presenting on the bottom part, India and Pakistan are participating in the South Sudanese peacekeeping operation, and our colonel from Pakistan will be explaining that case later on. And not just in military, but in various different fields. As I mentioned, there has to be an integrated training system, which includes the private sector as well, and the public sector also. And that is going to ensure that this can be a sustainable model down the road. And to attract more international organizations to this zone, there are many different strategies that we could formulate and pursue. The two Koreas already are hosts to certain international organizations, and we can begin with countries that we have diplomatic ties with, and also we could have other UN agencies attracted in this DMZ peace zone, which will further encourage inter-Korean cooperation for UN land or landmine, UN Women, and the World Food Program. Logistics Center, for example, could be established in the DMZ area. And so we have to do the searching and then establish the needed strategies and participate in these activities, thereby ensuring that these international organizations can come and work in our DMZ zone. With this, I will finish my presentation.
Thank you very much for this exciting presentation, which covers important issues that includes number one, South Korea should lead in a creative way in the United Peacekeeping missions. And also, we need to develop a K-brand, K-peace brand, because we know we all know about K-pop, K-wave, K-fashion, K-inspection, all kinds. So starting from K, so we need to develop a K-peace. And also, peace complex was also suggested by Professor Kwon. And also, Korea needed to develop the grade of Peacekeeping Operation Center into the national level. And he has given a very practical suggestions, which is kind of a hope, very strong hope that we can get for the future peacekeeping operation. And that includes that if the North Korea and South can jointly involve in the peacekeeping operation. Like, for example, if South Korea and North military forces jointly go to a third country in conflict under the management of United Nations force. You know, that's uneasy imagination at the moment, but in fact, such a thing is happening in other countries. So that's why we have invited Mr. Changes. He is a military attaché at the Pakistan embassy. There are such cases happening in between India and Pakistan, and there are a lot for us to learn from such case. Okay, Mr. Changes, please.
Good evening. Good evening. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. First of all, let me thank you all for being here and inviting me to speak on a very special topic, especially the one which is related to peace, which we all look for. So, in a very short brief, I'll be explaining the Pakistan's experience of peace under United Nations and some of the suggestions for the peace on the Korean Peninsula. This is the sequence which I intend following. In the initial part, I'll be telling you what are the contributions of Pakistan for peace under the United Nations flag. Then we also have a Pakistan's United Nations Peacekeeping Center, which is known as the CIPS, Center for International Peace and Stability. It is in our capital Islamabad, which is working for the education and training for the deployment of those people who go for the United Nations missions. Then I'll also share the most important part of this presentation, that is the experiences of the peace operations with India under the flag of United Nations, that how it has gone for almost more than 6 decades. We have been working together despite our lot many differences. And in the end, I will offer some of the suggestions for the peace on the Korean Peninsula. So coming to the first part, that is the Pakistan contribution for the peace. The history of our peace is since our inception in 1947, the Pakistan played a significant role as a responsible member of the international community. The Pakistan's peacekeepers have played a distinguished role while undertaking peacekeeping operations in all areas. The areas which have been very difficult and which have been very wanting. And the long-standing commitment for the United Nations peacekeeping operation can be traced back from 1960s onward. We had our first United Nations peacekeeping mission in Congo in 1960. Then in 1960 to 1970s, we had around 3 missions out of 11 total missions at West Irian, Yemen, and Congo. Then in 80 to 90s, there were overall less missions at United Nations. So there were 6 missions and we participated in 1 at Namibia. From 1990 to 1999, we had around 21 missions out of overall 36, and that were all around the globe. From 2000 to 2020, we had around deployment in 12 missions out of the 18 missions with highest troops contribution to the United Nations. And as far as the current deployment is concerned, out of 12 missions, we have deployment in the 8 missions with 3 missions, rather 4, the Congo, South Sudan, Mali, and the Central Asian republics. We have the troops which are deployed, and in 4 others, we have the observers and the staff officers who are deployed. So this can just give you a history of our relation with the peace with the United Nations. Now, if you see the deployment of these troops, you can see the deployment which has been there since 1960. The one which have been highlighted in the blue color, these are the current deployment in various areas which are now in Congo, for example, in South Sudan, in Mali, in Central African Republic. These are the one where troops are currently deployed. And out of 46 missions all over the world, we had around 219,000 peacekeepers in 28 countries in 4 continents. And we have remained amongst the top 3 troop contributors for consecutive 80 years. And 162 peacekeepers have sacrificed their lives for the global peace. This is very important, as the professor was also referring to one of the survey by the Koreans. So our people have never held their lives back, and they have laid their lives for the global peace. And at the bottom you can see these are not simple troop contribution. These are very specialized contribution of the troops along with their weapon and equipments. So you can see the infantry battalion have been 149, 4 artillery regiments, then the batteries, then armor regiments, then engineers, then the hospitals having the medics, then the supply with the logistics, then the signals, and the lot of aviation units. So this gives you a wholesome effort made by Pakistan so far. Now these are the current deployments, as I told you. The current deployment in 8 out of 12 missions with around 4,000 trips, that makes around 5.9% of the global peacekeepers. And we have currently infantry, artillery, armor, engineer, aviation, signals, logistics, and doctors, which are deployed in these 8 missions. The one at the top in white color, these have only staff officer and the military officers, whereas those on the left side in black color, these have the different troops which are deployed. Now coming over to the next important part, as I mentioned earlier, that Pakistan also has a Center for International Peace and Stability, which is known as commonly CIPS. It is in Islamabad, which is the capital of Pakistan. The CIPS has a history and had a connection with the South Korea. The CIPS was inaugurated on August 13, 2013 by United Nations Secretary General at that time, which was Ban Ki-moon. And he had a very special quote for Pakistan, the recognition. He said that I sense great confidence and hope here today, but the feeling that overwhelms me is gratitude. It is impossible to speak about the history of United Nations peacekeeping without highlighting such contributions of Pakistan. So some of the important tasks and roles which you can see, this institution since 2013, in a very short period of time, 8 years, it has become a premier institution for peace and conflict regime studies and training. It focuses on the realistic, focused, and mission-oriented peacekeeping training to the contingent commanders, to the military observers, and to the staff officers. And this also relates to the military, to the police, as well as the civilian scholars. So we are not restricted only to the military part only. As Professor was suggesting for the Peacekeeping Center, so we are already doing it for last 8 years in our country. In addition to that, the CIPS also focuses on the conceptual training and the research for peace. In warfare, as you all know, that the warfare keeps on changing and there are new challenges. So in order to respond to the new challenges, you need to have more research. You need to have new concepts. So one of the job of this CIPS is to cater for those new challenges and new opportunities which you can see. And in this short period, the CIPS has achieved the international stature and it is recognized all over the world. The vision and statement of the CIPS, it says that they presuppose a training facility to produce scholars in peace and conflict regime, beside organizing a wide range of peacekeeping training courses having enhanced foreign participation representation. So we are not only focusing on the training of our own soldiers, we are also looking towards the training and education of our foreign friends as well. And the 3 major departments which are being run, the first one is the peacekeeping training, which is the hardcore peacekeeping training, as we all know. The second one is the peace and conflict studies. And third one is the research and the analysis cell. As I mentioned that this peacekeeping center has earned a lot of international stature since 2013. So currently, you can see there are 8 countries we have already, we are working together, and we are working together and we are having the exchange of our officers who come to our SIPs, and our officers, they go to their courses. So you can see Bangladesh is there since 2016. We have Germany since 2017. We have Japan 2017. We have Egypt since 2017. We have United States of America since 2018. We have France. We have Switzerland. We have Kazakhstan. And luckily, currently we are also having, there's MOU which is being under consideration, and hopefully it will be signed with the United Nations Peacekeeping Center with the Korea as well. The achievements which has achieved, 135 peacekeepers training courses have been run so far in 8 years, and around 2,500 peacekeepers, including the 294 our foreign friends, have been trained. And out of those, 174 female peacekeepers have also been trained by the SIPs. And these are the courses which have been running over there in Pakistan. So you can see there are a variety of the courses covering all domains of the peacekeeping operations. Now, coming over to the most important part, that is what are the experiences of the peacekeeping operation with India under the United Nations. I think most of us know the brief history with our relation with India. Just to put in perspective, I'll not go into the details. If you see that the relation between Pakistan and India, these remain normally strained, mainly due to the Kashmir. There are many issues other as well, but you can relate and you can see the area to the Kashmir. Now the Kashmir, it is rather a Muslim majority region, and it was divided between India and Pakistan since 1947 after the British left the subcontinent. And the disputed territory of Kashmir, it awaits the free and fair plebiscite under the United Nations resolution, one of them which was passed in 1948. And because of the Kashmir territorial dispute, there have been 3 wars in 1948, 1965, 1971, and both armies, both countries have suffered a lot. And this is just like the DMZ is a very known place to the entire world, but the India and Pakistan region is also one of the most militarized zone. And in order to ensure the ceasefire and report its violations, there's a United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan, which is known as UNMOGIP. It is working under the United Nations Security Council Resolution 307, which was established in 1971, with a mandate to, as it reads, a durable ceasefire and cessation of the hostilities in all areas of conflict be strictly observed and remain in effect until withdrawal will take place as soon as practicable of all armed forces to their respective territories and to positions which will fully respect ceasefire line in Jammu and Kashmir supervised by the UNMOGIP. So UNMOGIP is the one which is already mandated in the Kashmir region. So Kashmir is, as yesterday Governor was mentioning, that the Gangwon probably is the only divided province. In our case, we have one of them is Kashmir, which is divided and still it is to be resolved. So the ceasefire is being observed and to be implemented by the UN mandate, which is under the UNMOGIP. So on Pakistan side, we have the observers, and on the Indian side, there are the observers. And there are South Korean military observers as well who participate and go there in the UNMOGIP as well. So one of our observation is that the Pakistan Army has always extended all-out support to the headquarters UNMOGIP. It ensured that United Nations military observers retain freedom of movement for investigation of violation on Pakistan side of the border. However, same is not being done on the Indian side. and the staff remain by and large restricted to the field areas. So these are the, just to give you a perspective that because of one of the reason is Kashmir where we have problems. But once we come to the United Nations, so we leave all our issues back home, and both the armies, luckily, they perform in a very professional way. So we have a history of experience of last 6 decades since 1960. As we feel that United Nations is a multinational forum where armed forces work together, setting aside their bilateral disputes for global peace. Now this is very important for a lesson for the South Korean and the North Koreans. So once you offer them, or once you, in the future, we hope that you work together. So this aim has to be achieved, that you have to leave those differences back home. So under United Nations ambit, Pakistan and India have been working in harmony, both as a staff officer or military observers in headquarters, in team sites and as part of the contingent, and exhibiting true professionalism. So we have been working together at the individual level as well and at the contingent level. There hasn't been any problem. And if you see some of the statistics, we participated together in at least 28 missions together since 1960, starting from the Congo. And currently we are serving in 2 important missions at Congo and South Sudan. And the troops and units of both countries have served under command of other countries' officers without any problem. I'll quote one of the very important and very famous incident here. The General Qamar Javed Bajwa, Chief of Army Staff, he served in 2007 to 2008 with the Indian Major General Bikram Singh, who later became the Indian Army Chief 2012 to 14. So he was the force commander, and the Brigadier General at that time, General Qamar Bajwa, he was serving under him. So he has always praised the Pakistani officer for his professionalism during the UN peacekeeping operation at Congo. And you can read his quote, whatever he says. So what I want to draw over here, that once such countries work together, so people have developed, people know each other, so these contacts can be used in the future as well. So one of the initiative which our Chief of Army Staff offered recently in March 2021 during a security dialogue, he said that it is time to bury the past and move forward. So normally soldiers don't speak the such language, but this is what who feels and who has worked with them, and he knows what are the prospects of the peace. So if South Korea and North Korea armies, they work together in United Nations peacekeeping operations, so there's a chance that people to people connections will be there. And you can see such examples in future as well. You can see in the picture, then Brigadier General Qamar is briefing the Indian officer, and later both were the Chief of Army Staff in their respective armies. Some of the, if I jot down what have been what we could achieve and what we could not achieve. It's not that you can achieve each and everything while working together. So the most important thing is you can have the confidence and the trust building from the individual to the contingent level. And that is the first step towards the peace. So once you have the trust, you have the confidence, then you can talk about the peace. And it has a goodwill amongst the, in between the both countries and also with the other part of the world as well. It will bring the improved soft image, of course, in this case for the North Koreans. Then the projection of the soft power. Normally, North Korea has been seen as projecting its hard power through the missiles and other things. So this can be one forum where it can project its positive image in the soft power. Then you can have the more engagement with the international community. So they are not isolated. People can see to them, people can talk to them, and they can also have the perspective of the world, what worlds think of them. And then a very good thing, that is a sense of competition. Once such nations work together in the United Nations mission, so there is a healthy competition. So there's a competition for peace. All right, the South Koreans will try to do better, and North Koreans will even try to do better. So this is how they work in a positive way for the peace. This is what we have learned working with the Indians. And what you can show to the world, as we have been doing it, that you become a responsible member of the global community who are committed for the peace. And unfortunately, there are few things which we have not been able to achieve because all these things have a political history. So the political mindset could not be changed, of course. This peace alone cannot bring changes at the political level. All right, it can play, it can bring a good environment, but if you think that this alone is going to work, this is a false conclusion, I will say. Every new provocation on the borders affected the peace process. All right, whenever, like in your case, you see in the last month, there were 7 missile tests, so it brings the confidence levels down. That is not in the hand of the forces on one part. And secondly, what we cannot offer and what we have not achieved, what the South Koreans and North Koreans are trying to do now, that both India and Pakistan have never shared the peacekeeping training domain. We have not worked together in the training peacekeeping center. So we will also like to see it if it is worked. So what lessons we can have for our countries as well. So some of the suggestions based on these presentations, I've jotted down very few. As I told you that we need to have a multiple approach. All right, that few are there. You need to have the public diplomacy, you need to have the military diplomacy, you have to people contact. So the military alone or the UN peacekeeping education alone cannot achieve the bring. You need to have the tandem or the parallel efforts going hand in hand. Of course, the military diplomacy in this case can take the lead, but it cannot go to the end state. And in the military diplomacy, the UN Peacekeeping Center at the DMZ, there, as the professor has already recommended, that it has to be at the international level. So it should not be restricted only to the both countries only, because then you will miss the experiences of the global peacekeepers. In that perspective, the SIPS Pakistan has a vast experience of United Nations peacekeeping operation in various domains. An experience of peace will be welcome to share with the ROK Peacekeeping Center through regular interaction, since we will be having soon our MOU signed with them. And the Pakistan and the Republic of Korea, they share many similarities, as I already mentioned. And I think we should start the initiative for the research for the peace. Like as you have suggested one, that we can think for the peace. So what all more subjects can be there, but they are there in our environment and which are applicable to your environment as well. So we can be benefited, and you also can be benefited from that exercise. Then the people-to-people contact. 2
more minutes, please.
The people-to-people contact, and these are very important. I'll just quote one of the initiative which has been done at our government level. It's a Kartarpur corridor. If some of you knows, there's another province in India and Pakistan which is known as Punjab. So the population in India is not only Hindu, they have Muslims, they have Sikhs as well. So one of the religious site or the religious place, it is only 4 kilometers from the Indian border towards the Pakistan side. So the people were not able to come without having a visa or traveling a lot, making a detour, like more than 70 kilometers. So in 2019, our Prime Minister, he made a corridor and he made a bridge over the river. So now people can come directly from India without any visa to Pakistan, just paying the fee of like $20. They can have their religious obligations and they can go back. So once this inauguration was done in 2019, the Indian ex-Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was there. The Chief Minister, like the Governor you say here, he visited from Indian Punjab to Pakistan. Then their Minister Najwat Singh Sidhu, he visited Pakistan. And there was an actor who also visited Pakistan. and there were around 40,000 people who visited at that inauguration. So normally they are allowed to visit like from 5,000 to 10,000. So in this 2 to 3 years of experience, we have earned a very goodwill with our brothers on the Indian side, and we would like to have more initiative like this. So this can be one thing which we can suggest to our Korean brothers, that you can also see such areas with the North Korea as well, especially at the DMZ.
Yeah.
And lastly, we have also have the initiative of the Peace Train, which is known as the Samjhota Express Train since 1970s, and which train has been coming from the Pakistan side to Indian side, and occasionally there was some incident as well. There are spoilers of the peace on either sides, so we have to be careful for that. But these initiatives, of course, play a lot, especially in people-to-people diplomacy. And lastly, just like your JSA, we have the Wagah border between the Pakistani Lahore and the Indian Amritsar at the Wagah border, where every day at the evening we have a ceremony, the flag hosting ceremony, or the flag is taken down. So the people on the both sides, they come and watch, and it is open to the all international community to watch. So these are some of the steps which we have been taking, and there are many which can be contributed a lot. So thank you very much for the patience hearing. I think I could be helpful in bringing my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chang. I'm sorry, Changet. And there are so many inspirational stories that you have gone through already with India. And the only problem is time is not with us. So yeah, we cannot go more of your presentation. And I'd like to ask Mr. Charlie Lamento, who is being connected to us online from Switzerland. Mr. Charlie Lamento, are you with us? So now let me give you the 7 minutes only because our time is up till 4:30. So I think we have to manage wisely. So 7 minutes will be given to Charlie Lamento, and afterwards, Professor Ha will take another presentation. All right, please go ahead, Charlie.
So good morning from Geneva, Switzerland. Can everybody hear me well? Yes? Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone this morning to the PyeongChang Peace Forum, delegates and honorable ladies and gentlemen. It's really a privilege to be here. And so let me go ahead and start my slideshow. Okay. There we go. Stop. I will be speaking to you about United Nations Peacekeeping Operation and Peace Building, just to kind of give you some background, really a background in this. And starting with, I don't want to be repetitive because I think Professor Kwan really talked a lot about the United Nations peacekeeping operations, but these are just, it started in 1948, and that, PKO operations have been involved in monitoring ceasefires, protecting civilians, preventing conflict, these kinds of things. I think what's quite interesting with all the work that they're doing at the United Nations peacekeeping operations is that they're focusing on local, national culture and social traditions. These are important. Each country has its own conflicts, but it's the approach and how you look at both the culture and the social traditions and how you solve those problems. Not every country is the same. I think everyone would agree to that. But they just do a lot of wonderful work. And think about it, is that here in Geneva, there are 193 United Nations member states that are involved at the UN, all working together. So we get the best of the best, not only with finances, but also with experts from all over the world that are sending their civilians, the military and police, all working together to solve problems and to help, really lend a hand, to serve. I think that's I think that that's what's important here is they're serving these host countries in order to help them kind of stand on their own 2 feet so that they can be successful themselves. I think it's also important to note that, again, doing the research that I did on this, that the United Nations Command, it was established in 1978 as a multinational military operation by the United Nations. And there's an operation obviously at the DMZ, and there's an operation in Japan. But the United Nations Command is different than the actual United Nations. It's not a United Nations peacekeeping mission. And so,
Charlie?
therefore, it doesn't fall under the command.
Charlie, just a moment. Charlie, your
Yes.
screen is not being shared. Could you check?
Oh, man. That's not good. Yes. So let's, okay, sorry. Important, very important. Thank you. Share. That's much better. Everyone's been in the dark.
Is it being
so
shared?
I'll go
I
to
don't
the
think it's
slides
being
once
shared.
again. Great.
Oh, yeah, it's
Okay,
now
great.
it's come.
So, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
Sorry.
I was talking about the PKO operations, the basics. Again, Professor Kwan really touched on a lot of the basics of the PKO operations, but I wanted to emphasize some points, and I think I've done that, as well as talking about the fact that the command in Japan and South Korea, the DMZ, it's not a part of the United Nations peacekeeping mission. So those are important facts to know. I think is that more involvement by the countries coming together and sharing their skills and their knowledge. That is what helps the host country really stand on their own 2 feet, and then at the same time help them solve their problems through their traditions, through their culture, and through their social traditions. That is so important. It's the process, it's the method. Each country has differences in how you have that approach, and I think that's what sometimes may be missing in some of these peacekeeping operations. Looking at the PKO Center, I think that's quite amazing in that it educates and develops national leaders in military policy, planning, and execution, evaluation, and such. It's located in South Korea as well, in Nonsan. But I agree also with the fact that it should be seriously considered that this would be in Gosang, that it be moved and transferred to Gosang in Gangwon Province, because Gangwon Province has, shall we say, become a city of peace, a venue of peace, and therefore that is like a great foundation, a great catalyst for bringing all the other international community together. I also think about the fact that this PKO Center also does have the ASEAN Regional Forum Conference, so it brings specific countries, regional organizations together, like the United Nations, has regional members. It has exchange visits with foreign nationals, not only with the defense and military, but also I find it interesting that they have foreign national exchange with defense colleges and security organizations. That is important because you're having the best of the best bring together amazing education and knowledge and be able to share that. And then, of course, you're adding value to each of these places. So the Republic of Korea is amazing in the fact that they're so committed, and they're not just committed in words, they're committed in actions. And you can see this time and time again.
All right, 3 more minutes, please.
There we go. Okay, so I was trying to show get out of my screen here. So I wanted to kind of go back and show the fact of what Korea is doing themselves here. So South Korea is doing its contribution to the United Nations. Again, I don't want to repeat everything Professor Kwan had said, but look at the work they're doing in Lebanon, South Sudan, India, Pakistan, and Western Sahara. I mean, this is amazing. It looks like today that the Republic of Korea has 569 soldiers serving in 5 United Nations peacekeeping missions. And so, again, it's about South Korea's commitment. But of course, in the past, you see the work they've done in Haiti, in East Timor, in Angola, Western Sahara, Somalia as well. That was their first peacekeeping missions. And so when we move on to look at in 2021, Seoul had the UN peacekeeping ministerial conference. And I think that was amazing because they, again, these are actions that Republic of Korea is taking that adds value to what they're doing. And I think that's what the international community needs to see happening. You also see the fact that we have not working so well today. Okay, so
yeah, I think you better give UNITAR example.
let me go back.
You
Okay,
you just have 1 minute left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have, with UNITAR, Global Hope Network International, who I represent here at the UN, is we have a peace training course that we've created already with UNITAR. So this is kind of a perfect cutting-edge peace building training program. I think, Professor Kwan, this is something that you're talking about, is having this partnership, and this is one of those things that we're offering. Beneficiaries and stakeholders, we're offering them this kind of training.
All right.
Our organization in 2021, we created this project with UNITAR. It's a 2-week peace building training, and I think it's really the target audience is government officials, civil society groups, and university professors and students, people who are committed to advancing peace and prosperity in Korea, to take this course. And I think we will be working with host universities as well there in South Korea. Our commitment is GH and I in 2019, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Gangwon Province government. And so we're very excited about the fact that really this is a sign of a private public commitment and partnership to see the success of Gosang and Gangwon Province become what we call this peace city. So we're here for you. We're here to serve you. And again, it's a privilege to be here today, and we look forward to following up after today. I hope that today is the catalyst. I hope that today becomes the place where all of us that are here today can reach out and continue to build discussions to help one another, including Professor Kwan. I look forward to communicating with you to see how we can serve you as well as serving Gosang Province. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. And sorry for limiting your time for presentation. 지금 정말 죄송하게 됐는데요. 예, 아무래도 너무
Yes, I apologize because all of the discussions and the presentation were so interesting, and I myself was able to learn a lot. We are pressed for time, and so I can only allocate a limited time to our remaining panelists. I apologize for this. But I would like to say that our journey does not end here. This is a starting point, and we will continue to cooperate. So I hope that is okay. So I would like to give 4 minutes to Dr. Ha, 4 minutes to Dr. Kim, and then we will hold a very brief Q&A. So please go ahead. Yes, I would like to thank the 3 previous presenters and panelists. I teach at the Hallym University's Graduate School of Global Cooperation, and I teach UN peace and security related to UN peacekeeping activities. I believe that I'm the only person teaching this course in Korea. And also in 2010, at the UNIFIL Command, I had the experience of being part of the troops dispatched there. And also, I also participated in the UN Senior Mission Leader course that was held in 2019. So I have a lot of interest in the UN peacekeeping operations, especially here, Gangwon-do is where the Peace Forum is being held. And we talk about the various areas where we can promote peace, and also we look at the various efforts for actually implementing the policies to promote peace. Especially we heard about the future direction, some of the suggestions for peace on the Korean Peninsula. We also heard from Pakistan and its experience, which I believe were quite significant and timely to hear at this moment. So as it was mentioned by our first presenter, Korea in 2021, of December of 2021, hosted the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial, and a lot was discussed during that time. In particular, it was emphasized that technology and medical support should be provided to the UN, for example, to start the Smart Camp pilot project, to deploy a medical support team to South Sudan, offer engineering demining training courses, provide helicopter assets, organize and offer female officer training courses, and deploy additional police force. So 6 main points were emphasized, especially when it comes to the engineering and the demining training, and also the training offered to the female officers. I think that there has been heightened interest about then where should the education take place. And as it was mentioned before, the PKO Center exists in Korea. We do believe that the private, the public sector, the police, and the military, and the NGOs, in order for them to all participate in peacekeeping operations, we need to have a national level PKO center. We have to expand the existing PKO center to be at a national level. I'm particularly interested in the issue of, rather than increasing the number of troops that are dispatched for peacekeeping operations, how can we further the role of Korean military within the international community? That was something that was mentioned by Professor Kwon. Up till now, but however, if you look at the Korean situation, most of the active military men serving their mandatory military duties and active service officers are sent as part of the overseas troop dispatch. However, we have limited military members at this moment, so I think that the troop dispatch should be expanded to include the reserve forces and the reserve officers. Also, in terms of having more Koreans enter into high-level positions in the UN, I myself have received the UN SML training, but I am now a retired military man, so I'm no longer with the military, so I was not able to participate in the high-level positions. But I do hope that the reserve officers can also have an opportunity to participate in these high-level positions of the UN. Also, I want to talk about the fostering of experts and also the operation of the national level PKO Center. I think that this is most important at this moment. Well, right now, the training for the troops that will be dispatched is carried out at the PKO Center at the National Defense University and also at the International Peace Supporting Standby Force Center under the Special Warfare Command. The National Defense University PKO Center focuses on training the individuals that will be dispatched, and the latter actually provides training related to responding to the dangerous situations, for example, attacks and terrorism, and also training for civil affairs and psychological warfare, as well as training and education about the language, the culture, and the customs of the country that they will be dispatched. Of course, right now, the training and education is carried out without any issues, but I do believe that in order to further advance going forward, we really have to integrate the two together, the PKO Center under the National Defense University and also the International Peace Supporting Standby Force Center under the Special Wartime Command. By doing so, I think that as we have more diverse members of our society participate in the troop dispatches, then we will have to have a national level PKO Center to train them. And so such a national level PKO Center's location is something that many people are interested in. And I do believe that here in Gangwon Province, where the PyeongChang Peace Forum is being held, is the right place for hosting that kind of a center. Gangwon-do is really interested in the issue of peace, and Gangwon Gangwon-do is pursuing to become a special self-governing province focusing on peace. So I do believe that peacekeeping-related agencies and organizations should be hosted here in Gangwon-do because Gangwon-do is a symbol of peace and it's at the center of division on the Korean Peninsula. I do believe Gangwon-do can play a greater role. As it was mentioned before, especially the Gosong area, I think is a right place to attract this kind of a center. Thank you very much. You made it very concise, but to the point. Thank you.
Last but not least, we'd like to invite Dr. Kim Kyunam, researcher at the Research Institute for Gangwon, for your remarks. In the interest of time, well, I'm being pressured to be very, very brief. I had prepared something to say, but now I'm being forced to just go to the conclusion right away. Our earlier speakers have already mentioned everything that has to be said. And this direction that we are taking right now hopefully will be expanded, and we have to take the road towards the international community. So I do want to share some brief remarks with you with regards to regardless of how the National PKO Center expands, there has to be consistency in the policy. When the West Germany was pursuing unification, and previously there were three principles. First is public consensus building. A huge budget, huge manpower would be necessary. So secondly, having a liberal democratic system established. Third is even with a change in the government, there will be a consistency in government policy. So right now in South Korea, there's been a lot of changes because of the change in government. But so in the future, we have to come up with some legislative and institutional measures to ensure policy consistency. Secondly, how are we going to see, or what kind of perception should we have with regards to peace? I believe that peace is actually a double-sided sword. After the 9/11 incident, we've had comprehensive security concept developed. And so countries engaged in cooperative security is not just a military area cooperation, but the area of cooperation had expanded to be very comprehensive. As we heard in the earlier presentation, the public, private, military, the police, everyone should come together to collaborate. And also added to our existing overseas dispatch of military officers, the businessmen and volunteers and the religious people who go overseas. I think the training program should be expanded to include anyone and everyone that is sent overseas. Last but not least, how are we going to establish a long-term plan for our peacekeeping operations? I believe that we cannot just stop at having a national PKO center. We have a UN peacekeeping university in operation also, and there has to be a UN peacekeeping activity university that should be established in the country also. So it has decades. Right now, the UN university has decades of history. It offers both the graduate courses as well. In San Jose, in Costa Rica, they have a university. This is a 1-year graduate school or master's course. And so they do provide a lot of different training on peacekeeping, but regards to the direction that we should be taking in the future, I think we need a differentiated approach. So the PKO Center in Korea, yes, we have to expand the organization, and what kind of an organization or an institution it will be, that's something for us to continue to decide. So we need to reach the agreement in the country, and in the process of becoming an agency under the UN auspices, I think having the academic researchers be involved will be important also. We could also consider, aside from the DMZ as a good location, there are a lot of online courses being provided right now. So I believe that it's enough for this center to have that symbolic significance. And our ancestors have taught us the concept of 홍익인간, which is devotion to the welfare of mankind. And I think this principle is in line with the UN vision and role as well. And so in the process of pursuing the implementation of these concepts, we could have some member states cooperative agency under the auspices of the certain university or an agency that will be educational institution that will be in charge, and they could offer some programs and be a bridgehead that will support particularly the young Koreans go overseas and participate in peacekeeping activities. So this PKO Center, this concept, this should be expanded, its role should be expanded, and should play the role of the ivory tower. In other words, do research work as well. So peace, volunteer studies, for example, could be an important new major that is, or department established. So the peacekeeping operations, yes, of course, the military aspect, military activities are an important pillar, but in the theory of war of Clausewitz, it said that we can see the theory of peace in the theory of war. And I think this just shows that peace is a double-edged sword. And so ultimately, the military is a tool for war, but then through balance of power and superiority in power, it is a tool to suppress the eruption of war. And so, and Bedetius had said that if you want peace, you should prepare for war. And I think this statement gives us a lot of insights. So when we engage in these peacekeeping activities, or when we participate in conflict areas, we have to remember that this is for all peace, because this is a reflection of our yearning for peace. And when we agree on that, and when we all act together based on this common understanding, I believe that genuine peace will be possible. And so everyone here, particularly the younger generation, your efforts and your continuous self-development will be important in our peacekeeping operations and activities in the future. Thank you very much.
For your wonderful discussion in response to the Professor Kwan's presentation and other discussions. So we all know that time has been up already, but if it is okay, then let me give a chance for some of you on the floor to raise questions. Yes, please.
Working? Yeah. Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Siwara. I'm from Busan National University, and I had a question, not about DMZ, but generally about peacekeeping. As far as I know, peacekeeping operations, they often happen in corrupted or oppressive countries like Sudan, Congo, Mali, and others, where governments are not really interested in protecting their citizens. And army, police officers, they exist there only to protect repressive regime. So don't you think that when peacekeepers train army and police there, they only enhance their ability to suppress, alternative democratic maybe forces? So I just wanted to know your thoughts about this. Maybe it was already discussed, or any changes can be done about this.
Okay. 그러면 지금 들으셨으니까 발표자께서
Yes,
답을
so
해주시면
our
감사하겠습니다.
speaker, our presenter will be answering that. We're talking about peacekeeping activities so far. We are not doing peacekeeping work to support the corrupt governments. So previously there were a lot of interstate conflicts. But if you look at Africa today, for example, there are a lot of conflicts that happen within a country. So these peacekeeping operations, our first principle is that we have to go in at the agreement of both sides of the conflict. And secondly is impartiality.
Impartial for the mission execution. And third one is non-use of force except defense of the mandate and self-defense. So if you're talking about Congo, Democratic Congo, so we don't have any peace to keep. In that case, we are following another United Nations chapter 7. Chapter 7 means we can use all necessary means to keep the peace. So we have two actually different types of peacekeeping. One is the peace enforcement. It means that we should suppress the rebel groups, any kind of groups. But following the chapter 6, we are using specific measures. Like I mentioned, that we just have 3 principles. One is the consent between the conflict party. Second is impartial. And third one is we should be careful to use the use of force. Understand?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good question and answer. And is there one more, if there is any? Yes, just last question, please.
So peace education, since we're talking about that, I was focusing on education. That's why I came to this session. But unfortunately, I don't think the education part was discussed too much. I think the focus was mostly on PKO. But in listening to the Pakistani example, I was thinking that, well, the UN PKO, yes, that India, Pakistan have been able to cooperate under that broad framework of UN PKO. So similarly, on the Korean Peninsula, we have a common identity as Korean people, but then what we are emphasizing more these days is citizen or civil education, However, in this session, unfortunately, I don't think any emphasis was given to the education part. So in that respect, if we were going to have a national PKO center in the future, then maybe it should be in charge of education work also. It's very unfortunate that we don't have enough time, but youth, peace and security, that's what I was trying to emphasize in the second part of my presentation. So UN Resolution 2250, I believe that was passed in 2015. That was adopted unanimously, and 23% of the global population is youth, and among those, about 600 million are living in conflict areas. And in conflict areas, you find a lot of the young boy soldiers also. So in the UN, at the UN, a major agenda is how to encourage participation of the youth in the peace process. So if we're going to establish a DMZ branch school, we should have a youth vision camp program. And also for the adolescents, for example, peace, security, cultural camp should be given and offered. So the security or peace education programs, they're almost non-existent for the youth at the moment. So since at the UN level, the peace issue is already being dealt with, we also should be providing such education courses to our younger generation. And this is directly in line with becoming a peacekeepers in the global community and becoming activists in the global community. And that will require global networking. And so that role should be played by the National PKO Center eventually.
Yes, just one more comment, please. Right?
I'll just briefly answer to your question. In my presentation, I discussed about the Pakistani Peacekeeping Operation Center, the SIPS. As I told you, it has got 3 areas. The first one is for the peacekeeping. The second one is for the conflict resolution, which offers the courses to the civilians, to the police as well. And the last one is for the research. Okay? And I also spoke about the multiple approach that do not only focus for the military. Okay, you should have the people-to-people contact. I mentioned about the religious corridor between the India and Pakistan. I also spoke about the peace train with the India and Pakistan. I also spoke about the Wagah border, the ceremonial drill. So this is a wholesome approach. Okay, the education, the center is going to focus on these things as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. We have spent a so meaningful time together with presenters and also, people on the floor. Only time is not with us, but this is the beginning. As you saw yesterday, there was a launch of Global Inner-Gangwon Cooperation Network. So we are thinking and hoping to include this issue as an agenda. So we'll continue our discussions, and it will be more materialized in coming days. So it looks to me that the United Nations and peacekeeping and peace education, it should be a game changer for peace in Korean Peninsula and the world. Such interesting and such important issues that we have dealt with. And thank you so much for your passion, for your commitment and interest. Thank you.